everyone. Welcome to another one of our Facebook Lives. We're really excited for you. It's our last one of 2020. I cannot believe it.
Wow.
2 more days. What is it? 3 more days, whatever it is. And speaking of days, it could not be worse outside. And Alex, who's back with us for the last time this year, is headed to Cleveland today to go back. I guess it's home, even though I consider you home. But you are going home.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I know. It's so nasty out. We were talking about how it's icy and rainy and windy and snowy and cold and all of that stuff. So, which brings us to the coat you would need for this sort of weather. So I thought maybe you should put it on. Last week, we sent you the last issue, issue 12 of So Confident 2020. And this is the last version, the third version of the Crossroads shirt made in fur. Faux fur is the deal this year. It's all over, ready to wear, in the stores, from very expensive to not so expensive. And if you're a So Confident member 2020, you'll want to check in with us in a couple of hours at 1 o'clock because I'm doing a special Facebook Live just for you, and we're going to talk more in depth about this jacket and the fur and all of that. But it's just so cute. And then yesterday, Kathy, who made the jacket, arrived with the matching pillow. So I can't wait to take this home and put it on my sofa and take a little nap on it. But, you know, if you're not up for making a faux fur anything that's related to a garment, they make great pillows. So other home.
Great. This is a great lounge jacket too. Just
well, that's
sitting
right.
On your couch
it would go over pajamas really well.
Popcorn and a movie sounds great.
There you go. Yes, and so, but I want, in contrast, Kathy also brought this one in. This is the Crossroads shirt. So look at what you can do with the same pattern: a short faux fur jacket, or the full-length, segmented, pieced Crossroads shirt in kimono fabrics. Unbelievable, the difference. But that's the value of most of our patterns, really, is that you can take the same pattern, and it's all about fabrication, and all you have to do is change it up, edit a little bit, subtract some pattern pieces, add some things, and you can use the same pattern over and over and over for a lot of different looks. All right, so we're going to get rid of Crossroads here for the moment. Erin's going to take him away. As a little side note, for those of you who cannot tune in at 1 o'clock for your Facebook Live So Confident 2020, we are making a change for you, the 2020 members. In 2021, you will no longer be able to access your magazine through issue. But it is in your account. You'll always be able to view it in that way. So just make a little note that it's a slight change for you. For those of you who were accustomed to grabbing that magazine on issue, it will no longer be there.
I've loved those magazines. Betsy's done a great job.
I tell you what, it's the finest thing we've ever produced. They're so beautiful. So we've been really proud of 2020. But as you know, 2021 has a different look, although there will be 4 magazines if you're a yearly subscriber. But we're starting out in January with our Maison top to make with kits. You'll hear all about that on Monday, so watch for that. But you only have 2 more days, 2.5 more days to sign up with the special price of $375 or $325 if you are a current or past So Confident member from any of the series 1 through series 10. And it's a huge savings, really. So if you sign up for the yearly, you save $50 on the yearly price in the next 2.5 days. Now, if you sign up by the month, which is $45 a month, and if you did that all year and you decided to sign up, now you would have saved $165. I mean, that's huge.
It's good math. Good job.
I know. I noticed I had to look. Can't remember numbers in my head. So, one other update for those of you who have been asking about the fitting book. fitting book. It's here. And we don't have them all printed yet by any means, but those of you who are members of So Confident 2020, this is free to you. It will be in your account soon, hopefully next week. And then for those of you who are not members of So Confident 2020, or Series 2020, I'll just leave it at that, you will be able to buy this book. And also, we've developed a fitting workbook. This is like working with paper dolls. You were never a paper doll girl.
Well, it's like Linda Lee in your pocket.
Ooh, I like that. Maybe that should be the byline down here. At any rate, we'll talk more about this, but there will be the fitting book and the workbook to go along with it, and we'll be introducing that early January. All right. But let's talk about us. So we had a few days off, and you wanted to sew, and you came here, and you're just a sweatshirt girl.
I am. Shoes and sweatshirts.
That's right. Hoodies, no hoodies, whatever. And so you decided that the Bristol top, which is what you have on, is like the ultimate sweatshirt. Has a little style. It's not just your ordinary old sweatshirt. Has this nice yoke to it. Front is shorter than the back, or maybe the back is shorter than the front, I'm not sure, but it's an asymmetric hem, no matter what. So you chose this fabric, and in a fleece.
I did.
So the front side, the face side of the fabric is like a jersey. You can see the ribs to it, and the back side is soft and fluffy and fleecy. And we decided to put ribbing on it, which is not necessarily what the pattern calls for. And so in making this, there were some adjustments to be made, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, about how we dealt with the ribbing. But tell them about what you did to your personalized...
Oh, well, if you can see here on the shoulder, I did a little hand embroidery in handwriting. I wrote in my own handwriting a little stencil of the phrase, "You are magic." So it kind of goes back along the neckline, just in black embroidery thread, and did that last night. Yeah, but I saw some, as you heard from a previous week, I love Pinterest, so I pin a lot of embroidery things on there too. So you're seeing a lot of embellished, hand embroidered things on even sweatshirts, t-shirts, even small things like this. So I just had an inspiration. How fun would it be to have a handwriting on a sweatshirt?
What did you use to write it? A friction pen or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, a friction pen is the kind of thing where if you make a mistake and you don't embroider right over it, you can steam it and it just comes right off. Although you were so perfect, I don't think you had to do that. And you used a back stitch.
Used a back stitch, yes.
And pearl cotton, one strand of pearl cotton. But you could use anything. I mean, if you want a really bold statement, you could double the thread. You could use 4 or 5 strands of DMC cotton embroidery thread. You could use ribbon embroidery. You could do it in colors. You could do shading. You could do fill stitches in the middle of the O. You could really go crazy. But the whole script thing is very popular, I've noticed. So I think it's really a fantastic treatment. And I like the way that it makes people just really appear, because it's not just in the front, you know, like just a thing right here. There's a little magic going on.
Yeah. Well, it only really says "you are" right here, so then you kind of wonder, like, well, what does it actually say?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you have it on with the Getaway jeans. Yes, which is a great combination of the Bristol top, Getaway jeans, and if you're going to be taking the So Confident 2021, you're going to be making some joggers in February. So this would be great with the joggers from February too. I have on the Bristol top as well in not a fleece, but just a knit, really, a jersey knit. And this contrast is actually the wrong side of the fabric, so I was able to do a little bit of contrast work. I'm wearing a turtleneck because of the neck thing. Nora Ephraim and her neck thing. If you're too young to know about that book. Nope. But there will be people out there who will know exactly what I'm talking about. So the neck. and warmth because of the day. And I'm wearing it over my pencil pants in a lightweight ponte, which are my go-to pants most days. So we're all decked out today.
And very cool necklace. We talk about shoes a lot. You could talk about jewelry.
Yeah, every time I travel, I have a friend, Kathy Miller, in Hudson, Wisconsin, and every time I visit her, we go to this little gallery, and there's an artist there who does this. So I've owned this for several years, but it's one of my favorites. So this is some of you may have seen this before, because I have shown it on a Facebook Live, but this is another version of the Bristol top. And this is actually a print knit. So it was a jersey knit in a real bold, wild print. And I fused this to heat and bond, the fabric. Then I drew on the back of the heat and bond so I could see my lines, some sort of abstract design, and then cut it out and fuse this to the front of the sweatshirt. And then by hand, using the very same thread that you used, the pearl cotton, it's outlined in a blanket stitch. So it makes a fun way to embellish something. Personalize it with, it could have lettering, big bold letters. It could be a motif, a flower, or something like that, or it can just be abstract like this.
I think this is a Christmas gift I never got.
Probably. There are quite a few of those lying around in the sewing workshop. But there's a print over there, a bolt of fabric on the end. Why don't you grab that? And this is the kind of print that you sometimes don't know what to do with because it's so big and bold. This happens to be a border print, but this is the kind of thing you could use as something to cut up, because you could have a floral or part of a floral, and then you could have some stripes, and it would look like you found all these coordinating fabrics and cut from various sections of this, and people would think, oh, she's so creative, she found all those fabrics that go together. How did she do that when it came from one fabric? So this is the kind of thing, the kind of print that I think that I used for that piece, and you could use for your own. There are other garments that I think make the ultimate sweatshirt as well. Deb here made the helix top. This is the one that has the diagonal lines, so it's like a swirl in a fleece. And then I'm going to have you grab that white one down there. This is the Odette top in a fleece. And the Odette has some very interesting lines as well. So, you know, if you're going to be hanging out at the house and you need some comfy clothes, but you don't want to wear the same old sweatshirt every day, make your own and think about one of these patterns, each of which have little twists to them. You know, they're not just your ordinary tops and sweatshirts. Cool. So think about those. Now, last week, Alex and I talked about her shoes. I think they were all your shoes, pretty much. Well, I thought I'd better show you my shoes for this week, of what you might consider wearing with your sweatshirt.
You can decide whose you like better.
Yeah. So thank you, Nancy Schreiber, for introducing me to P448s. That's the brand. I didn't think I wanted these. I thought, oh my gosh, this is just too weird. But guess what? I love them, and I wear them all the time. So P448s, sneakers. Now I'm into sneakers. This was my really first pair of not tennis shoes, but sneakers that were cool. So I like them very much. Then, of course, speaking of tennis, who's my favorite tennis player?
Her crush, Roger Federer.
Roger Federer. She got to see him live in playing and has a really close-up picture of him. I'm so jealous. Anyway, Roger Federer is the world's best tennis player, or at least the top two. And he's associated with a company called On, O-N, out of Switzerland. And they've designed these running shoes. Now, I don't run. You do, but I don't run. But that doesn't mean I don't own running shoes. But these are, to me, cool street shoes that are the most comfortable tennis shoe sneakers that I've ever put on my feet. So think about On. They're not that expensive, so that's what's nice. And then I thought about all my friends in Florida and Houston and Tucson and San Diego who are enjoying the sunshine today. And you know, you've got to have a pair of Toms. And buy the wildest ones you can buy. They're very inexpensive. It's a good cause. For every pair you buy, another pair goes somewhere, given away to people in need. So think about Toms. So I went from the more expensive to the least expensive, but that's what I would wear with my sweatshirts.
Love it.
All right. This is one, a Bristol top that has been made using, again, both sides of the fleece, the smooth side and the fleecy side. So it's a nice contrast in tone. Not every fleece fabric really changes in color, but this particular one does, and I think that's really cool. So let's talk technique a little bit. Fleeces, believe it or not, can press wrong. I mean, if you're pressing on the reverse side of a fleece, it's like velvet. Like on this side right here. You can get the impression of the iron on here. So you have to treat it like velvet. And so this is a piece of mohair that I put on my entire ironing surface. You know, you can buy the smaller velvet boards and that sort of thing, but if you buy a big piece of this, maybe a yard of this, and put it all over your ironing surface, then you don't have to move the ironing piece around, the press cloth or whatever you want to call it around. You just move the garment that you're making or the pieces that you're sewing on around. So this is really cheap, really stiff mohair. We don't sell anything this awful. So you would Google mohair upholstery fabric, and I did that this morning and all kinds of sources come up. So if you're thinking of making anything with a pile or a nap, buy yourself something like this, some mohair.
Probably not cat hair or dog hair. You probably couldn't make your own.
Probably not. No, I think that'd be hard. All right, so fleece does have a nap, so you're going to want to lay your pattern pieces all in one direction. It's a knit, so polyester thread is your thread of choice, and we sell Metricine Metler thread here, and we do have the option of you ordering thread whenever you order fabric. You can order one up to 4 spools, I believe. And we've been selling a lot of thread because of that, because who wants to go out in this kind of weather to buy 1 spool of thread? Not me. Walking foot, even feed foot, you know, there's a thickness to this, there's a loftiness to this fabric, so you want to be able to feed both layers of the fabric through the presser foot evenly, and that's what a walking foot does. We've talked about the pressing and the mohair, but the other thing you want to have is a tailor's ham, and you want to have a ham that has a woolly side to it, so it has a grip to it. There are a lot of hams that you can buy that are cute, like on Etsy, that people make, but they make them generally in cottons, and that's okay, but you want a 2-sided ham, one that's woolly on one side and more like a duck cloth or a muslin on the other side, so that you have 2 different surfaces. This has a little bit of the mohair type nap to it, so that you're not going to be pressing, again, an impression into the fabric. And particularly on this kind of garment where you have a curved shoulder seam, you want to be able to press that curve, steam that curve in over a ham. So anytime you have a curved seam anywhere, you want to press over a ham to retain the shape and the curve. For the seam finishes of these, we did a standard seam finish of sewing it at 5/8 of an inch, and then with our isocord thread, with 3 threads serged the edge and press the seams one way.
Do you have a serger preference?
Oh, a serger preference. Yeah, you probably haven't listened to me about my serger thing going on, but I do have the new Bernina serger, and it's awesome. It is awesome. So if you have a chance to take a look at one at a Bernina dealer, I highly recommend it. It has the air threading. What I love about it, that I haven't seen on other sergers, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it does have a free arm. And I've not seen that on any other piece of equipment, so that I can get into a neck opening or a sleeve really easily. It's fantastic. And you can't hear it, it's so quiet. Okay. So one of the things that you run into on conditions like this, where you have some serging that's fairly close to an exposed corner or edge, I want to finish off my serging. So I have in your pincushion that you made for me 10 years ago, a big eyed needle that I can thread the chain of the serger thread through that needle and then take it back through and under the stitches. So I don't have the little fuzzies coming out at the end of the serger thread. And I did that quite a bit when making these bristles, because there are a few. I even do it on the neck. When I serge the seam on the inside of the neck, I'll finish that off, because even on a hanger I don't really want to look at those fuzzies either. I'm just as particular on the insides of my garments as the outsides. So now let's talk about ribbing. All right, ribbing, you can put this down, I think. Ribbing comes in 3 ways. You can get it as yardage. This is a fantastic piece of ribbing. It comes in all kinds of fibers: cotton, rayon of bamboo, and this is a wool ribbing. And what's interesting about this one is it's navy on one side and kind of a heather tone, and black on the other. So you can use either side, because ribbing is an interlock, so the same ribs show up on both sides of the fabric. It's not a jersey, it's an interlock. So this is a really nice gutsy ribbing, and it's yardage. You know, it has 2 selvages. Or you can buy ribbing in a tube. And we have lots of colors of this. So what you do with this, because generally you're cutting your ribbing as a single layer, so you would slice this along the fold and make it a single layer and deal with it as one layer. But it is constructed by the manufacturer in a tube. You can also buy ribbing in finished narrow pieces. Now this is a piece that's wool, and this was the finished piece. This is how it came to me, in a long strip. You order it by the yard, but it's only this wide. So it comes in lots of different widths. I think this is 7 inches or 8 inches or whatever. So you might be able to find some ribbing that's just perfect for the width of whatever you're working with, the cuff or the bottom bands or the neck ribbings or whatever. And I've also seen them with some stripes, so it looks like Adidas, you know, very athletic. So check that out. We don't carry this. You can Google ribbing and it'll. One of the things that several things when I was sewing ribbing, I realized I had not sewn a lot of ribbing in my career, my life. In fact, never. And so it was a little intimidating, really.
It's hard to believe.
Well, I know. As many casual things as I've made, but I discovered that I cut the same pieces in the length of the pattern pieces, but when I tried to put on the neck binding, it was too big. So I ended up cutting off 2 inches from the neck binding of this Bristol in ribbing, which is a lot, because it's so stretchy, which is of course the idea of ribbing. And then this, the same thing should have been done on the cuff, should have been reduced in size so that the ribbing fit the wrist and then is sewn to whatever the width of the bottom of the sleeve is. So this was a mistake, but we left it so that you could see when you're dealing with ribbing, you want to be more careful about where it's fitting and be sure of the right dimensions. I don't know about the bottom in this particular case. This ribbing seemed to have worked in this design, but if you were doing the bottom of a sweatshirt where you want that ribbing to actually hug you, you would take off 2, 3, 4 inches. And it took 2 or 3 stabs at putting the binding on a neckline to determine what was right. So you have to be willing to get your ripper out. I ripped it a couple of times and kept cutting off until I realized, okay, that sounds about right. But then by the time you steam that neckline, that ribbing over your ham, you can get that to settle down and lie really flat. The other thing I discovered is it didn't like my regular pins. And so I got out my, wherever they are, pins. Here they are. These are the longer and much, much narrower fine quilting pins from Clover. These were the only pins that just went into the ribbing nicely. Otherwise, they were like, almost made a noise, and I had a hard time. But these are very flexible, so when you're pinning through 2 layers of ribbing, let's say, and a thick fleece, I could bend that needle or pin and get that right into all those layers, and it was no problem whatsoever. And my other regular pins, I had to work at it, and it bent the pins. So these pins were very, I like them anyway, actually, even for other things. And of course, I always use Fusey Web to fuse everything, you know, to get things to settle down so that things don't grow when you're sewing, particularly on the cross grain. So let's show some fabrics, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. We have mostly fleece on the wall, but we have some French terries too, because they fall in kind of the same category. So I always have to look at the back to see what they are. I think we have mostly French terries right here.
I do love that you have printed ones.
Yes. This is very lightweight, tissue weight, but it is a French terry. You can see the loops on the back side. But to find a wool blend printed floral French terry is very, very unusual and rare, actually. We think it looks really good with this beautiful burgundy that's in rayon and cotton with some spandex. Very drapey and nice. This beautiful olive. It's fantastic. So you can see it's pretty much the same color on both sides. Who doesn't need a black sweatshirt? I do.
Love this green.
Now this we get into the fleece. And this one has the soft fleece on the back and the jersey texture on the face. Same color pretty much, although you could get a little bit of a tonal thing going on, but not much.
When with my gray sweatshirt, we picked out this gray fleece and then matched a gray ribbing.
Right.
You have a few fabrics you're able to do that with your ribbing color selection.
That's right. Here's the green that goes with this one.
Which is a pretty great match.
I know. I love this color. This is Erin's favorite color of the season, right? Because every time we choose fabric, she says, well, I want that. Okay. And of course, we have the gray ribbing and the gray fleece. All right, so this is a fleece in my color with the matching ribbing. And we have red. And currently, we don't have any red ribbing. Or do we? No,
it's not terribly red.
No, it's not terribly red. So, but you could do contrasts. You know, you could put the red on the gold. Let's see what it looks like over here. You could definitely do that.
That's cool.
Yeah, that looks nice. And then there's a bolt over there in the cream color that we should bring in here. This is a beautiful fleece. It's one of the softest ones I've ever found. Has a little bit of a heather texture on the face, and then a more solid color on the back. But, you know, I thought that would be really beautiful with this. I think that's a nice combination.
Mm-hmm.
So the grape,
I like that.
The grape ribbing and the natural color. So we do have some of the yardage of this blue. Here.
Sometimes it's hard to imagine these are the same, from the same bolt.
I know. I love that aspect of it. These wash beautifully. When we washed your gray, it shrunk a little bit, but not a lot, as I recall. I can't tell you exactly how much. But I do think you want to pre-wash these fabrics, just in case. You never know. Because these are the kind of garments you're going to be washing and drying, and you don't want to have to baby them at all. Some of these tubes get kind of silly. So this is a French terry that is this lovely mauve heather on one side. It looks the same on the other side, except it's a different texture. That one. We have the speckle cream French terry. You could do that with the black ribbing, or probably even the navy, or even a color. Mm-hmm. But this black wool ribbing would be great with it. Mm-hmm. We have a little bit of the cinnamon left. As you can see, not much, but
such an interesting color.
Yeah, it's been a really popular color. Unfortunately, I laid this down on the muddy floor this morning. We have a little bit of this blush pink. Probably enough for 1 or 2 orders is all. But this looks fantastic with the grape.
Nice.
And we have this mint green in French terry. And red French terry, chili red we're calling it, I think. I love this. It's more of a blue red, very jewel tone for the jewel tone ladies who like good reds, good lipstick reds. And then we have one last, and this is another one of these fantastic prints. But that is so pretty. And put that with this, either this olive.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even this.
Maybe, oh, the green, the dark green is fantastic. Yes. Oh, I have one more back here I forgot about. This incredible teal color just came in. Now this is a color. And I don't really know anyone who can't wear this color. Redheads, brunettes, blondes. So, beautiful French terry. All right, I think that is today's topics. Everything we've talked about, all the fabrics that we've shown here today, including the print, viscose, the bold print, and the 2 printed French terries are on sale, 20% off. The Bristol, the Helix, and the Odette and Ivy patterns that are printed patterns, $18. We also have a tutorial that takes you through the whole process of making this garment and doing the embellishing and how you apply these and how you stitch these. And that is called Applique Bristol. So that tutorial is on sale for $15. And then we're including another tutorial called Sewing Fashion Knits for $15 as well. So if you're not sewn with knits, take a look at that tutorial. And be sure, if you have not sewn with knits, or if you want to tune up, or if you just want to have a fun time in January, please join us for Sew Confident 2021. Because next Monday, we're sending out all the information about what we're going to be sewing 2 weeks after that, or 3 weeks, whatever it is, 2 weeks after that. And we're going to be introducing the kits and the supply list that you need, and giving you the dates of when things are available to you. And that all starts, the kickoff is next Monday. So you've got 2.5 more days to sign up for that. Okay, any questions?
Yes, and remember to repeat the questions.
Okay.
Can you tell how much stretch is in a lot of these fabrics and which direction the stretch is going?
Can we tell how much stretch there is and which direction it's going? On our website, for the most part, we say whether a fabric is a 2-way stretch or a 4-way stretch, meaning just 1 way or 2 ways. It's a very confusing term, in my opinion. But we don't say the degree of stretch. But when you get the fabric, or you have a fabric, you would hold on to one end and put your fingers, let's say 4 inches apart from that, and you would stretch it, and you'd see how far it goes. And if it went If it went from 4 inches to 5 inches, you know that would be 25% stretch.
Okay. Could you use the fabric that you use on the top? Could you use that on the bands? On the neck?
Can you use the same fabric on the top and the bands? Absolutely. That's what's been done here. This is the same fabric for the bands. It just happens to be the right side. This is the wrong side, or I'm not sure. You could call this the right side and this the wrong side, but absolutely. This is the first Bristol that's ever been made with ribbing. So all the other...
yours you're wearing.
Yes, and mine is also the same fabric. That's right. So yes, commonly we do that. Because ribbing is, to find the right ribbing and the right size and the right color and the right whatever, is not that easy. So yes, you absolutely. And our patterns are built for fabric, and ribbing is another issue of adjustment of pattern length.
I've tried my walking foot twice, and each time the knit bunches up under the backside of the foot and snags. Any suggestions?
The question is, she's used her walking foot several times, and it bunches up in the back. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I do know that if you don't start with the entire walking foot on your fabric, it could do that. It doesn't like it when part of the presser foot is off of the fabric and the front part of the presser foot is on the fabric. And it doesn't know how to come up and over and get onto the fabric. I find that's true with all presser feet, actually, that I find I now set that in further than I used to from the raw edge. So try that, or try a leveler. And you can make a leveler out of like cardstock or several layers of cardstock so that the presser foot is level. When it's tipped, it doesn't like it. I don't know if there's something else going on. I'd have to know maybe your brand and the type of fabric maybe you're using, and you're welcome to email me and discuss it a little bit if you want to. But that's an easy answer for the moment, I guess.
If you don't have a serger, can you use an overlock foot?
If you don't have a serger, can you use an overlock foot? I say no. The answer is yes, you can. But I think it's better to have a raw edge than a poorly finished edge with an overlocker foot. There's no need to do that on a knit because knits don't ravel, so just leave it raw. If you are just using your sewing machine, do you use special thread like Isacord, or just the same thread that you use for the entire garment? In the serger? In the sewing machine. Oh, I'm using polyester thread on knits to sew. That's standard Metler, Metricine polyester thread. The Isacord is for my serger only. I do not sew with that on my sewing machine. I want to make that very clear. That is a finishing thread, not a sewing thread.
It has like a sheen to it. And
yeah, it's very fine. It's meant for machine embroidery. I've had people call me or email me and say, I walk into my, let's say, Bernina dealer to buy Isacord. I tell them I want it for my serger, and they say, oh, you can't use it in your serger because it's really meant for embroidery, but it's beautiful in a serger. So don't tell them what you're using it for, just buy it.
Why not use cover stitch for the ribbing instead of the serger?
Why not use a cover stitch for your ribbing instead of a serger? You can absolutely use the cover stitch to finish an edge around a neckline. You could use the cover stitch across here, but the cover stitch is a finishing for, how do I explain this? For the exterior of a garment. And serging finishes the interior. So I use my serger to finish the seam of the binding first, and then I will either top stitch or cover stitch this over that. So they're two different things. Cover stitching is for embellishment in a way, nailing things down, but serging is finishing something on the inside. I'm going to have to think about that question a little bit harder, but that's generally right, I think.
How much ribbing did you use on the Bristol?
How much ribbing did I use on the Bristol? I had a half a yard and didn't use it all. but almost all.
Lengthening the bristle. Can you lengthen the bristle 2 inches, and do you have any issues at the hip area? Do you need more width?
The question is, can you lengthen the bristle? And if so, are there any issues, and does something happen at the hip? This one has been lengthened 1 inch. This one's been lengthened something. Mine has not. So you want to retain the original. Well, first of all, there's no lengthen and shorten line on the bristle, which is unusual for our patterns. And I can't explain why it's not there. Well, I sort of can, but I'm not going to. But you want to retain the original circumference of the garment under the arm. You want to retain the original circumference at the bottom. So once you spread the pattern, whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches, you're going to connect from the top to the bottom in a straight line. You know, when you separate the two pattern pieces, they're going to be offset. But you want to connect from top to bottom, and don't pay too much attention with what's happening in the middle. The Bristol pattern also has a dress version, and some people shorten the dress version if you want to lengthen it a lot. So you can go either way. Lengthen the short one, shorten the long one.
If you've already made the dress and don't like it as much, is there a way to make it a top instead?
If you've already made the dress and don't like it as much and you want to make it into a top, I think you probably can do that. I would take the top pieces from the pattern and lay that on that dress and see if you can recut it. I think it's a little bit more than just whacking it off, but I bet you can reshape it a little bit. I bet you can do it. I've never done it, but I feel like you could.
The olive French terry, is it heavy enough for sweat bottoms, or would it be too clingy?
The olive French terry, oh, I think this would make nice bottoms. This is nice, perfect weight.
That's what I used on the joggers.
Oh, this is what Erin just said she used on the joggers, this exact fabric.
Well, in the blue. But
in the blue, but yes, same fabric. Yeah.
Going through the questions. Talk about stretch. Do you ever use a twin needle?
The question is, do I ever use a twin needle? I don't. I have a cover stitch option. I'd rather see a zigzag stitch as a feature stitch than twin needles. I have trouble with twin needles, having that little tunnel in between the two lines of stitching. I don't care for it at all, so I don't use them. But a lot of people do.
I think you'd really get a tunnel on this.
I think you'd really get a tunnel on a fleece, yeah. But if you don't have a serger, it may be what you want to do. But that brings up another point. If you're a serious sewer and you're sewing garments, I think you should, and you don't own a serger, I think rather than upgrading other things or even buying more and more fabric, I really suggest that you invest in even a very inexpensive serger. I think it would up the look of your garments.
Do you use a single or a double layer of ribbing?
Do I use a single or double layer of ribbing? Well, it depends. I use a double layer because we're using it off either the tube or the yardage. So that's double layer. But if you're buying ribbing as a width, this has a finished edge to it. And so you would use it single layer.
Okay, would you make a robe out of the fleece?
Ooh. Would I make a robe out of the fleece?
You love a good robe.
I know, absolutely I would. And I would use either our Mix-It shirt pattern as a robe, which I've done, or our Now or Zen shirt patterns and just lengthen them. Makes great robes.
What color trim would you use on the cinnamon?
What color of trim would I use on the cinnamon? You know, we have had cinnamon ribbing. It makes me wonder if we have cinnamon ribbing. But if we don't, what would I do? I think this would be cool. The gray?
Goes with quite a bit.
I know.
I like the yellow even, maybe.
Oh, let's try the yellow. Ooh. I love that.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Can the French terry make a legging?
Can a French terry make a legging? A true legging, I don't know that there's enough recovery on a French terry for a legging. I wouldn't do that. I think it would bag out too much. Even though there's spandex in it, a true legging material has a lot of stretch and recovery, and French terry doesn't have that.
Are the Bristol, Helix, and Odette easy to alter for large biceps?
Are the Bristol, Odette, and Helix easy to alter for a larger bicep? The Helix is tricky. I wouldn't get into that, although I will say it does not have a super narrow sleeve to it to begin with. So you might be all right. You could measure across. My sense is that this is a pretty generous sleeve and you might not need that alteration. The Bristol sleeve, you would do your standard spreading. That would work. And the Odette, I don't know. Same thing on a, well, yeah, you can make a same thing on a raglan. It's just a raglan sleeve, so sure. If you know how to do that, we have a tutorial called Anatomy of a Sleeve, and it talks about, well, it's going to be in our new fitting book. There you go. But if you know how to do it, if you have that question, you probably know how to do it. But if you don't know how to increase the girth of a bicep, we do have a standalone tutorial called Anatomy of a Sleeve, and it is in the new fitting book that will be out next month.
Straight of grain on knits. Those tiny ribs are impossible to follow. Other choices?
Straight of grain on a knit. Well, that little guy is hard to see. The little rib is hard to see. But I do try to get some good light. First of all, you're cutting them single layer, so that, because it's impossible to cut on straight of grain doubled. So you're going to, I get my little almost magnifying glass out, or I get good light for sure, and I lay a big ruler down and a chalk marker, and I try to chalk mark a rib as best I can, or I'll put pins along it. Then I have something to measure from and line up to use for straight of grain. It's important. I think you can be a little bit off on straight of grain on these fleecy French terry sorts of things, but you don't want to be terribly off. And after you wash the fabric, it can get pretty wonky. So you want to find those ribs if you can. I know it's hard, but try.
Could you show the printed fleece paired with grape ribbing, and does it work together?
Let's see if this one works with grape. Oh yeah, that's gorgeous. Yep.
Do you press the French terry or do you only steam it?
Do I press the French terry or only steam it? I do press it lightly. I mostly steam it, do a lot of hand pressing and hand manipulation of it. But with my mohair base on my pressing surface, I can get an iron to it lightly.
When you're serging the seam edges after sewing seams, are you serging the edges together or separately?
When serging the edges after sewing the seam, am I serging them together? And the answer is yes. I'm serging the two raw edges together and pressing the seam one direction. Towards the back if it's a side seam. Towards the back if it's a shoulder seam. Yeah.
So you don't finish the edges, do you press them open or do you
It de-
press it?
if I don't serge the edges together, am I pressing it open or pressing it to one direction? You know, that depends on the kind of knit it is. If it is a jersey and it's curling terribly, then you're going to want to sew a straight stitch, a line of stitching, again near an edge and trim it. That'll help it lie flat and press it open. Or you can still stitch another line of stitching about 1/4 of an inch away from the original line of stitching, stitch the two seam allowances together and trim it close. That's a nice way to control the curl. If it's an interlock and it's not curling, I would just press it open.
Is the printed fleece sheer?
The printed fleeces are a little bit sheer. I wouldn't call it sheer, but you definitely can kind of see. I don't know about this one.
This one's not as sheer.
Not really.
Do we have that Bristol, the sheer one that Kathy made? Because you could do a sheer. I mean, if it's a lightweight.
Oh, in the mint green one?
No, like that black and white one.
Oh, you know what? That's in my closet at home.
Oh. Well, tell
Yeah, I made a Bristol in a sheer fabric-ish, about like this. In fact, shearer, I think. And it had shearer sleeves.
multiple.
And I wear it over a mix-it tank. Yeah.
Would you double the thickness if it's thin?
Would I double the thickness if it's thin? No. I would just wear an under layer.
What shirt do you have under your Bristol, Linda?
I have on a swing tee with the funnel neck and the long sleeves.
Do you ever just serge the seam instead of sewing it first?
Do I ever just serge the seam instead of sewing it first? Rarely. I sew first because I want to be precise on my seam allowance line, and serging is a little bit tricky to get exactly. If you're making something very loosely woven or loose fitting, I don't have a problem with that. But when you look at finely made clothes, if you're going to go to the really great stores and look at fine ready-to-wear, you're not going to see seams that are just serged. That is a way to construct that's just not as top quality, I guess. So no, I don't. Now, if I'm making exercise pants in scuba or children's clothes or something that needs to be very hardy in wearing, I'll use a 4-thread serge as a seam. But I don't really wear those kind of clothes or make those kind of clothes. But if you're doing that, then yes, you could. But for fine, you know, like this sort of thing, I wouldn't do it. But that's actually a personal thing. I know there are a lot of teachers out there who teach, you know, serge a garment in a day sort of thing, and they're using serges. The only exception to that is I did make a very, very tissue weight semi-sheer Hudson top, and it was so sheer I didn't want to see a big heavy seam through it. So I used a 2-thread serged edge as the seam, and that worked just fine because you'll see that every once in a while in a really, really fine, finely made garment. Every fabric, every style, every condition is a choice. And that's why I always recommend making samples first. I'm a big proponent of getting all your issues worked out before you ever even cut out the garment practically, for sure before you start sewing it. You know what the seam finish is going to be, you know how you're going to finish the hem, you know what thread you're going to use, you know whether your walking foot works. Work it out. Make notes.
Okay, that's all I see.
All right. Well, Alex, I hope it's not another year before I see you. It's been fantastic to have you as my co-presenter.
You do all the work. Let's give Linda a round of applause.
But it's really been fun, and I thank you all for joining us throughout all of these Facebook Lives since we started in, I don't know, May or whatever it's been. I now have something to look forward to myself every Tuesday, We're going to continue them through 2021 until we figure out that nobody's watching anymore, and then I don't have to do it anymore, I guess. But it's been fantastic, and it's been a creative boost for me. I hope it has been for you, and I hope it's allowed you to spend some time thinking about something else and getting more into your sewing and passion. So thank you so much. It's been a great 2020 in respect of doing this and sewing. So appreciate it, and I'll miss you. So
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone.